Beatboxing as we know it today grew out of the hip-hop scene in New York with Razel, the godfather of noise, and Kenny Muhammad extending what the human voice was capable of. Even though there's been a relatively small community of beatboxers here in Australia, in the last 15 years they've had a great influence in bringing beatboxing to the world stage. I'm about to head into the streets of Sydney, Australia, to meet with some incredible musicians, and together we're going to dive into the underground world of beatboxing.
Well, I just recently started studying composition and music production. It's been really fun. So yeah, I just decided to start doing music full time, even though I'm not really getting paid for it all the time, but you know. Yeah, I'm a beatboxer, I play guitar, and I'm learning how to compose. So yeah.
Cool. So what's your experience in beatboxing? You say you're a beatboxer, but you know, I say I'm a professional piano player.
Yeah.
But in reality, I can play like 6 chords.
Yeah. Yeah.
What have you got to prove it, man?
Well, I started beatboxing a while back, probably joined the scene around, I could be wrong, but 2014, and started battling, and got involved in that scene. But now I'm like not necessarily focusing too much on battling. Now I'm performing at festivals and a few gigs here and there. So yeah.
Beatboxing as well?
Just exclusively beatboxing for the gigs. But yeah, I have done like gigs doing guitar and that, but I find it more fun to get up on stage and just make weird noises in front of a bunch of people.
And the people enjoy it?
Yeah, they do, yeah, especially on a good system. It sounds awesome. Yeah.
Would you mind giving us a demonstration of some throat bass?
Okay, cool. I haven't done it all morning.
That's all morning.
So like that kind of stuff. And like a lot of Mongolian throat singing really focuses around on saying things like hey, 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 and then ooh. So it's kind of Mongolian throat singing is a little different, but it's closely related. A lot of Mongolian throat singing really focuses on some overtones and has kind of some upper partial content to the frequencies that they have, so it creates some kind of harmonics, which is really interesting. But yeah, throat bass is more or less just that kind of. It's a bit different.
So beatboxing, these Mongolian beatboxers, they've been around for years.
Yeah, I think beatboxing, I think mouth percussion has been around for a long time. I mean, way back when, I'd imagine there'd be people there's no music around, right? So, I mean, you'd have to kind of make some kind of percussion for yourself. Obviously, they have like skins using those as membranes and drums, but I mean, I don't see why people wouldn't have done some kind of percussion with their mouths.
Do you find yourself using your beatboxing skills to help with your other production experiences?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Like, I listen to something I've written and I kind of beatbox over it to get a general rhythm. That's something that definitely helps out. Also, I feel like just improvising a melody wherever I am, it could be like on a train or wherever, I kind of like to jot that down on my phone, bring it home, and then analyze the melody and try and transfer that into a digital environment. But that's how I feel like influential beatboxing can be. But I feel like composing, when it comes to beatboxing, like actual beatbox routines, I feel like they kind of hold well just as they are without any other instruments.
Well, you were the first pracky that came to me and said, oh, I want to do all of this beatboxing stuff with the students, and I think your enthusiasm and passion was excellent throughout the whole time you were here. The first time I heard about beatboxing and like saw evidence of beatboxing, I think was probably like Tom Thumb, Reggie Watts, just those crazy guys that are super artistic with the way that they layer and also like treat their voices as an instrument. It's just amazing. If a voice is an instrument considered singing, yes, of course beatboxing is an instrument. I don't know the name of the guy, but the beatboxer, but he doesn't call himself a beatboxer, he calls himself a vocal percussionist. the idea of North beatboxer, he's like, you'd swear that you're listening to an actual drum kit. It's almost orchestral in his tone color, the way that he does it.
Hi, my name is Matthew Toohey, and I've pretty much been singing and making noises and annoying my parents since I was little. And I've always been singing in groups and high school and choirs, and get with our mates and just sing a cappella. At the time, the big group then was Rockapella. I don't know if you've heard of them, but Rockapella, the Real Singers, we did everything we could to emulate them.
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of experienced that as well. People like to call themselves vocal percussionists or something more along those terms. I feel like, because they're trying to break out of that mold of the old hip hop kind of. That's where the beatbox roots were, and people are trying to expand and try and push beatboxing a little bit further than that, because it has a lot more potential than just where it came from. And I feel like that's one thing that people are just starting to realize. And I feel like that beatboxing, like you were saying, it needs to be open out more to the public so people can understand this.
Yeah, so not a lot of personal experience, but I think a lot of what I do and try and promote is about including and even beginning with the music of children's own cultures. And certainly when I did first start using music that was very beatboxing centered in my own classes, probably in the mid-2000s, it was more about just including repertoire with it in, using some of his songs. And then when I got here to teach at the Con, discovering that we had masterclass funds, and it's funny because I think typically in the academy, what you do with your masterclass funds is, you say, well, I'm a cello teacher, so I need to get in an even more expert cello teacher or another expert cello teacher. And I think in music education, it's the opposite. We need to use our funds, and this is, this is true here, but I think it's true generally for music educators in all professional learning, however long your career is, that you need to use that to open yourself up to new experiences. There's no way that we can all listen to all of the music in the world before we die, or become expert in all of it, but we can at least know genres and open ourselves to the sophistications of them. So fairly early on, I think my second year here, I brought in Mal Webb, who is a fairly well-known, what does he call himself, vocal gymnast, to come and beatboxing was the number one thing I wanted him to do, so he did a couple of things on that. But also he looked at ideas of looping and things like that as well. And so that's probably as close, because just like all of the students here, I gave all of those things a go myself. Yeah.
So I'm a vocal percussionist and a bass. And what does that mean? What does vocal percussion mean? How is that different from beatboxing? Now, I'm sure a lot of people may argue with me, especially those who do beatboxing and vocal percussion and have a bit of crossover. But simply, my opinion is that like drums in an ensemble, whether it's a jazz ensemble, a rock group, whatever, they're not alone. You don't just buy albums for listening to drums necessarily. Yeah, you have a few drum solos here and there, but vocal percussion is the art of making noises with our mouth, with our whole upper part of our body, basically, all the different vocal folds and our epiglottis and our tongue and clicks, and shaping our mouth to make noises that emulate a real drum kit, whether it's a rock drum kit, a jazz drum kit, other percussion, sometimes 808 type stuff where you get electronic drums and things like that. Depending on the genre, you're trying to meld vocal percussion too. Beatboxing, on the other hand, can really stand on its own. It has its own world championships, and people do these incredible things with beatboxing. You can mix beatboxing with actual singing. So depending on your breaths and how you speak and how you pause and mesh your sounds, like your hi-hat sounds or your bass sounds, you can use those plosives and bridge them with vocals and stuff like that. So you can get this, you can basically, they call it a beatbox because you're the human beatbox. You can make all these noises and you yourself are your one-man band.
back memories. Wanna go back to the memories.
And some of the stuff these guys are doing these days with beatboxing, I can't do. It's quite incredible. You got people like Tom Thumb and Mal Webb and all of these other guys. I don't even keep up with all of it because it's a whole nother niche of musicians and experts in this. And it's just really pretty incredible.
It's my signature sound called the crab scratch. Yeah. That's my signature sound. Woo! So my background was painting and making comics when I was a little child. Then one day I just somehow saw a beatboxing video on MTV. Yeah, that was MTV. And then at first I didn't expect the music actually coming from the guy's mouth. Then the video just kept being shown many times after that. And I just like, wait a second, so what is so fun about this video? Just the guy rapping and the guy just do some stupid action at the back. So what's so fun about that? And then I start to realize that the music actually coming from the guy's mouth. And I was like, no freaking way. Since I was a little kid, I always try to find way to express myself through my artwork and my comic, just to show some friends around. Until I found out about beatboxing on the MTV show, I start to realize that it is something I want to learn. Beatboxing is something I really want to learn the skill to be able to express music and also impress other people. So after that, I just kind of like found out beatboxing and some tutorials on YouTube and start to learn by myself and taught myself how to beatbox. That's it. Yeah, that's how I start beatboxing. I think for me, art or music or any other type of art form at the end of the day is to express the human feeling and also for people to gain the freedom so they can express themselves freely outside of the stress of work and study. I think if we treat beatboxing like music, for me beatboxing is music. And since we already have music class, we have dancing class, we have art class in school for kids, so why not beatboxing? I think that could be really cool to show kids that they can actually do more than an average people can actually do using their own body to create some organic and unique sound music. And beatbox can help them to really express themselves. And from beatboxing, they can learn a lot of basic platform of music also. And I think they're all related. Yeah.
All right, so my name is Zaf, as you all know me by my name. Beatbox name, Z-Man. I've been beatboxing for 14 years now. First got started back in 2003, if I'm correct. It was the first edition of Australian Idol. I remember I was sitting in my living room, I was eating my dinner, and then Joel Turner came on. And you know, it's ever since I watched that elimination, it's been non-stop since then. I was just so blown away by that performance. I remember the moment it finished, I finished up my dinner as quick as I could and I ran upstairs and I started like emulating like what he was doing. And I remember like the first thing which came out of my mouth was like a so yeah. Yeah, just basic. All the sounds very simple. I could do the hi-hat, I could do the basic snare, I could do the bass kick, And now it's like over the years I've added this whole new arsenal of sounds. And you know, it's just every year I add 1 or 2 more sounds, which I never would have believed I could do such a long time ago. Just seeing yourself progress, like, you know, your clarity of sounds, your ability to put together routines which make sense, which sound like a musical composition, you know, making better battle routines, having more impact with your beatboxing. But I think one thing which really strikes with me is 70 to 80% of the stuff I'm doing today, I used to do 5 years ago. And
Really?
I've just kept recreating, getting better, and it sounds nothing like what it did 5 years ago.
But fundamentally,
But yeah,
it's the same core ingredients.
exactly, yep.
That's really interesting.
So that to me is the most fulfilling thing.
So beatboxing in Australia, has it come out of nowhere, or I mean, I know you've been around it for a while. So
Yep.
who are the big players, and who's really made it change for the better?
Okay, so I'll do a little bit of a history lesson. So I started in 2003, but from the period of like 2003 to 2008, I wasn't really involved in the scene. I know there was a big scene when Joel Turner was going around and recruiting for the Beatbox Alliance back in 2000, was that 2004? I think it was.
Back in the day.
I know there was like a heap of beatboxers who submitted interest, and Joel Turner and Mark Holden were like choosing who would be part of the Beatbox Alliance. And I remember watching that and seeing a whole load of beatboxers from all parts of Australia submitting videos.
Yeah. And was it a judged competition, or was it just kind of they were just choosing and quietly
I
sending
can't
them
remember.
a message? Okay.
All I remember watching is all these different clips of different beatboxers. This was on TV, by the way.
Yeah.
But you know, back then I was still very young, and you know, I had no like communication with the outside world. I didn't know how to get in touch with people, you know.
Yeah.
So for those first few years, it was nothing for me. I was the lone wolf. You know, what would keep me going when 2005, when they introduced YouTube, you know,
The big player.
that was YouTube from 2005 to 2008 for me was, you know, before I had met any beatboxers online because I actually met my first beatboxer at school.
Yeah.
So YouTube was a big player. Just used to really watch a lot of the World Beatbox Championships. Obviously, it was good knowing that, you know, the first world champion was Australian, you know, Joel Turner. There's so much of pride, you know. It's like, you know, I'm Aussie as well, and he was like my first beatbox hero, because when he won the world championships, it's like I was like, you know what, I want to represent Australia on the world stage one day.
Yeah.
It was like sealed in 2005. I like set that goal. Yes, I was really young, but that was one of the first beatbox goals I set myself. So moving on, I really started going more on the humanbeatbox.com forums.
Yeah.
And I came across a guy named Blake Glass, his name is, shout out. Also known as Pneumatic, his old beatbox name. He actually organized a jam which I'd missed. Literally, when I met him on the forums, he had a jam at Hyde Park the week before. And there was a small little clique of beatboxers. I think there was about 5 of them. I think, if I remember, it was Adam Jida, James Seal, Pneumatic, J-Dub. Shout out to J-Dub. That's when I first heard of him. Still in the scene today. Going to be judging this year's Oz Champs, actually.
Cool.
Who am I forgetting? Jeffrey. I forget his beatbox name, but Jeffrey. Lemon Cheese. That's it. That was his beatbox name. Lemon Cheese. So I connected with Blake, and like we were kind of chatting back and forth, and he was telling me like how Mad Master C, he was like the first guy to own Beatbox Australia. Like he had the rights and the logo and everything. Yeah. He was like the first person, but apparently like he drifted away from the scene, and there was nothing. It was just BBA was just like dead. There was no BBA. So Blake was like, you know what? We were chatting back and forth, and he's like, I'm gonna revive it. So he revived BBA for the second time. I don't remember the year. But I remember when I first met him and all those beatboxers who I mentioned who were at that Hyde Park Jam. Yeah. We met up in 2008, I think it was, in Bankstown. I don't remember the event, but it was a beatbox battle, and that was my first battle. And all of those dudes were there as well. My first battle was actually with J-Dub. Surprisingly won that battle, and then I lost the next battle. I think James Seal ended up winning that one. Yeah. He was known for his like his Elmo beat, so he could do like the Elmo voice, and he would put like a beatbox over it, and that was like the big thing. Then that died off. And reaching 2012, 2012, I was second year uni. And at that point, it had been so many years, I really wanted to get better. At that point, I really wanted some interaction. I wanted to be able to jam with beatboxers, but there was nothing there, and I was getting sick of it. So I remember I went onto this music forum. Yeah. And I made this long post. Just asking if there were any beatboxers out there in Australia. And if anyone knew any beatboxers, could they point me in the right direction? And then I remember just reading the responses, like 90% of the responses were trolls, like beatbox is dead, like where's Joel Turner now? Like he's nowhere to be seen. Like just these comments, it wasn't helpful at all. So I went on Facebook and I just typed up Beatbox Australia. I remember I got Facebook like late 2011, I think it was. Yeah. And this was like early 2012. I just typed it in, and I could see that there was a Beatbox Australia Facebook page. So I just messaged the page, and I'm like, hey, is anyone there? Like, what's going on with the scene? Like, is there anyone around? And that's when the old owner, Spillage, he replied back to me, and he's like, hey man, no, there is really no scene at the moment. I'm just looking after the page. Mad Master C is gone. I've just kept this page alive in case like something sparks up in the future. So yeah, he was like, yeah man, but if you hear any beatbox events going on or anything, which I had no clue, he's like, just let me know. And I'm like, damn, is that it? Like,
that's what you've got. That's what you message. Hey, well, what can you help me out with? Well, we've got some responsibility for you. How about that? You work it out. That's funny.
And then I remember not long after I messaged the page, Bo O'Brien, shout out to Beatbox Bo. I think he got in contact with Terry not long after, and he was asking the question as well, like, hey, what's going on with the scene? Like, it used to be big, like back in 05, 06, like when Joel Turner won Worlds, and now it's nothing. But we all knew like there were beatboxers scattered everywhere. There was just no like one community to like bring it together as one. So I think Bo initiated the idea, like he was in talks with Terry, like let's revive BBA for the third time. As they say, third time's the charm, right? And thankfully, since then it has been the charm. It's just here we are right now. yeah, rest is history, really. I mean, I could go on. I'll be here all day, literally, if I talk about every single event and its meaning. But if we just look at a timeline, the real event which really kicked things off was in 2013. It was BBA's first official event. It was called the Mega Meet. We had two special guests, Ball Z, the 3-time UK champion, and Beastie, the French champion and the top 8 in the world. Ball Z was also top 16 in the world. We had them come down, and we had beatboxers come over from Queensland, Perth, I don't know about South. No, we didn't have any South Australia, but we had beatboxers
Come from all
gather
around.
You know, BBA was really starting to gain some traction, and by having this event and really focusing on promoting it, I think that event we had about anywhere from 20 to 30 beatboxers. I think if I remember correctly, maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. Around a minimum of 20 at least. It was a really, really good time, and we also had Eto Man from Japan. Shout out to him. He was here at the time as well. But yeah, that event is really what kicked off everything. That's what brought all of us beatboxers together. And even though some beatboxers didn't attend that event, they knew about it. I think all it took was those two names, getting those two names down. That's what we wanted to do, some exposure, so beatboxers can come out of their shell and be like, oh yeah, yeah. So and then Bo kept pushing hard, and he organised the second official Australian Championship in 2013. And once that started, that's just took off.
Yeah.
It just took off. 2014 championships, that was in Melbourne. That's probably the most entries we've had so far. I think we had somewhere close to 75 to 80 entries.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So that basically told us, yes, there is a heap of beatboxers all around. They're just they're either afraid to show their skill, or they just don't know that there is an active community out there to be a part of.
Yeah.
So
I'm Gail. I am a beatboxer from Sydney. I'm currently 28. Yeah, trying to remember how old I am because I've been beatboxing for a while. Yeah, and this is what I do.
YouTube, I think, has been the biggest catalyst for beatboxing in its current form.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
How did you learn stuff off YouTube? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
where you...
I watched originally saw Joel Turner on Australian Idol, and I was like, oh, I make noises like that as a kid all the time, and I was just like, whoa, okay. And then I was like, wait, so other people are doing this, and then he got massive, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then so I was kind of did a little bit on my own, got obsessed with dubstep, and then I saw Reeks one on YouTube with dubstep beatboxing, and I was just like, oh shit, okay. And then down the rabbit hole I went, just straight in.
Here we are.
And now I'm world champ, watching world champs battles and going, whoa, there's Slizzer, and now there's this guy over here, and this guy's really fast, Alem and Skiller, and I was like, you just go, whoa,
the zone of what's able to be done.
It just keeps going. You're like, oh, this is a thing. It was not as crazy as people would, when they would look it up now, would be like, oh, there's millions and millions of views on these videos. It was just kind of this is a battle, there's an event with people, and you can't tell if you're actually meant to like these people because the way they are on stage, and then until you actually see videos and then behind the scenes, or you actually meet them, you go, oh, okay, they were not. Or you grow up, you get older, and you go, oh, you actually battle yourself, and then you kind of go, that's not really them, that's just their performance on stage. bumped into Genesis a long time ago too. Like first time, went on a big night out with my mates. Was on the bloody morning bus home after the train lines were down or something.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember I was sitting on the train. Oh, sorry, the back of the bus, and I was sitting there like dead because it had been a long night. Back when lockouts were not the thing, so it was kind of like we'd been out all night. I was sitting there, and I hear like like the Reeks Wine interview. And I went, wait, what? And I was like, it was coming out of his headphones, but because I was so in tune with that song, because I'd watched it so many times myself, I just went, tapped the guy on the shoulder, and I was like, is that Reeks One? He's like, yeah, you know beatboxing? And straight away it was just like, you know beatboxing? Yeah, me too. Like, bam, straight away. And then I'm like, what? So you beatbox too? And he's like, yeah, I just won a competition. I'm the best in Australia now. And I was like, oh, wow. I didn't know there was a competition. That's so cool. We both got off on Parramatta. Like, we were both heading back because I think we went to work that way too. It was Genesis. And I was just like, that was insane. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to be on this. I've already gone through this thing, but I'm going to be on a TV show soon as well for Australia's Got Talent. Yeah. And I was like, what the hell? Like, you're on a talent show for beatboxing? I just do it. I just come out after a night out listening to dubstep all night and just go recreate it myself for my friends. Like, I did performing and like, what the hell? Like, yeah, that was a crazy moment too. And it's just like, as soon as someone goes beatboxing, you just go, whoa! Like, it's instantly, as soon as someone says beatboxing, your brain just goes, we're already family. Like, that's all it takes. Yeah, you like beatboxing? What genre do you like? Doesn't matter. How old are you? What age are you? What sex are you? What's your orientation? Doesn't matter. It's just, do you beatbox? It doesn't matter where you're from. Like, it's just always straight away. Do you speak music? Let's talk.
I love it. That's a really good way of saying it.
Let's
have that.
Let's have a chat. Let's have a chat. Like,
yeah.
Let's catch up before we've even known each other.
That's so cool. I love that.
It's the craziest thing. I think that used to be the old battle. Like, I think it needs to evolve, because it used to all, like, older style beatboxing used to all be about making special sounds and then hiding your special sound, and that be your sound. And then, like, now I think everyone, if they have a special sound, should just teach it to someone else, because they might make their own sound, or they might use it in their own way. Like, I think it should be more about not just how many sounds you can make. The sounds have to have a reason.
Yeah,
they have to have a purpose. Like, it's got to have a purpose. Like, every sound. That's my most important thing with me when I write, and when I, like, not write because I don't really, but when I come up with something, the song, it has to, in my head, it has to be like, what sort of genre am I trying to create, or what kind of emotion am I trying to represent, or what am I trying to bring out for myself? Yeah. What sounds will complement, or what will make that happen?
So many people would still have that stereotype in their head that beatboxing is already decided. You're going to do a hip hop beat and you're going to drop some low notes in there. And so many people have that preconceived idea of that's what beatboxing is. But what you've just described, that is exactly the job description of a composer.
Yes.
How do you make a song, and how do you make it effective towards a particular emotion or purpose?
Yeah.
You are straight up a composer.
Oh,
that's what you're doing, right? You're just not writing it down in the old-fashioned Western tradition.
Yeah.
You're just doing it your own way.
I just record it off my phone, or like constantly
practice it.
Practice that sound until it sounds the way I want it to sound for that particular point.
To be honest, I don't know. Like, I might be a bit weird, but I don't really consider myself just a beatboxer, because beside beatboxing, I do many other things too. I make music video, directing, I do concept art, I do painting, and I do design, graphic design, and also a bit of fashion design. Beatboxing for me is just not making music out of the mouth. For me, it's like, it's a kind of way for me, it's an art form for me to be able to express my thoughts and my message, and also the energy and the aesthetic I want to present. Yeah, so I don't really put myself in a box.
My name's Liam. Hello. I'm a composer. In my third year of university, I am a vocalist. Some might say a beatboxer. I'd more define myself to be a vocalist because, well, I'm not really. I wouldn't define myself to be a beatboxer, to be honest.
Why not?
Well, there's a whole range of sounds which I can't do. That's just me saying I'm not as good. But that's not really the point. The point is, like, I don't use my voice to, you know, make kits. It's to show, and it's to make music. You could argue that beatboxing is, well, it is music. I would argue, but I don't just use I use all parts of my voice, and that's how I define myself.
And you're also here at the conservatorium doing composition.
Yeah.
And how does that? Do they work together at all, or how do you?
It helps me compose a lot, especially with rhythms.
Okay.
Because yeah, it all rhythms. You know, there's like you'll hear a lot of that, and you'll feel a lot of that. It's not just for rhythms, it's for, you know, things like texture or timbre or stuff, because, like, if you think of a drum kit on its own, you have the really low, then you have the from the hi-hat and the or like whatever you want the snare to be. Those are 3 different timbres. And I think beatboxing, and especially learning to beatbox in high school, it's helped me not just as a rhythmic composer or a vocal composer, but as a composer, it's made me think about, you know, the lows, the highs, and the middles, like registers. Even though, you know, you could argue that it's unpitched percussion, it's still ultimately pitched, and ultimately it's still timbred. So that's how I see it in my compositional output.
Cool.
Well, I mean, like, I've watched sort of professional learning on studio recording, and producers use beatboxing all the time to be able to talk about the beat, the kind of style that they want to be able to come across. Do you want it like shakers, like chicka 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 chicka, or do you want a strong snare drum like it's like you hear the producers, and it's just another sort of language. So if teachers use that language to be able to get across what they want, I mean, yeah, it'd be hopefully just instinctive way of being able to teach.
I'm Bernie Van Til. I am one of, I'm going to guess, not very many female beatboxers in Australia. I know we're spread out across the world, which is really, really cool. But I started when I was about 12. I heard a track, every beatboxer's going to know the origins, but you know, I heard a track from Razel, and I was just like, what the hell is this? This is all vocal, what? And like, being a little Filipino kid, our strong point is always just mimicking something and then developing it from there. So I got hooked into this beatboxing world from the godfather of noise, Razel. Nice. And I started copying off his tracks on his CDs, and then eventually it just developed from there. And you know, I was playing guitar around that age as well, so it just sort of transcended into my musicality and all that other stuff that I was already doing. So that's sort of where it started, and it's at a point right now where I'm just doing, like, I'm passionate about music. So I've got, you know, my setups all along here, and there's always going to be an instrument that I'm interested in playing. So I started off with guitar, and then, you know, I started collecting my MIDIs, my keyboards, and then I started getting the interfaces, the digital software, the speakers and stuff. And I live with musicians and filmmakers as well, so we've got other equipment that kind of comes into play. And so, yeah, I just started developing music and using beatboxing as an element to create something unique, but also I don't know, something that stands out in a positive way, you know, and helps me make tracks and be innovative when I don't quite know what I'm sampling with drums and digital software. So it comes in really handy like that. Yeah.
So do you use it as just a tool in the way, or does it actually end up in the final tracks?
Oh yeah, it definitely ends up in the final track. I mean, in some regards, if I'm like, oh, it doesn't quite sound thick enough texturally in the track itself, I need this to be an 808, or, you know, I go, okay, well, if the beatboxing doesn't come in chunky enough, how do I make that, you know, transfer what I'm doing here to, like, you know, what I have to tap out on the MIDI, or what I have to, you know, select on my digital software. So in that regard, yes, it's a tool, but usually more often than not, I'll use it as in the end product, because it is something unique. And whenever someone hears a track that I've made and they go, oh, what's that sound? Or what kit is that? I'm like, that's me. They go, what? So that's you know, handy, really handy.
Something really signature about the sound.
Definitely.
Because I've done not a lot of track production in my time, but a few, and especially trap music.
Yeah.
I find it so much fun, and I'm really keen on it. But all the sounds are the same.
Yes.
And you download the kit of sounds from a pack online for free, and suddenly you've got the exact same tools as everyone else.
Absolutely.
Very tricky to make it stand out.
Exactly. And it's like, to an extent, you can make that your own and personalize it. And it's like, okay, everyone has the same tool, but it's how you use it, say. But I agree. I think that's why a lot of mainstream music these days does have a tendency to sound interchangeable and like the other, because, okay, yeah, it's popular, but also probably because we're all using the same thing with the same knowledge base. Yeah. Only in my humble opinion.
Generally, absolutely, I totally agree.
But yeah, and I think that's why beatboxing is such a great element to have, because, you know, think about producer Timbaland. He does a lot of urban, hip hop, R&B. He's got pretty much the same kit and production skills as, you know, the next famous producer that we know in that world, but he's got a mind like a beatboxer, and he uses his vocal elements and beatboxing elements in a lot of his older stuff to create a foundation on a track. And I think that's what makes a Timbaland track so different from most others, you know?
Yeah, you can really tell.
Yeah,
the work
definitely.
that's gone into it.
Definitely.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So when I've done it in the classroom, it kind of works the same way. I've done looping and stuff in the classroom, and just, you know, teaching them how to make basic sounds, because one of our principles as beatboxers is clean sounds.
Yep.
You know, convincing sounds, and then secondarily you need to get patterns happening.
Yeah.
And then musicality. Like, there's all these layers that come into it, and a looping pedal kind of makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Do everything at the same time. So it's just, if being able to beatbox just makes everything easier, because you don't need to learn the technical skill of, you know, using a digital audio workstation.
Absolutely.
Or using all these synthesizers.
I think it comes in handy. Like, I think this is a brilliant idea as well, because even if these kids don't go on to pursue beatboxing in itself or use it in whatever they do, but they still are passionate about music and they want to be singers, or they want to be guitarists or drummers. Especially in singing, they're learning how to support their breathing, and they're learning how to articulate, you know, which is going to come in so handy when they sing, and when they're, you know, writing or notating out a particular rhythmic score or melodic section. So even if they didn't, pursue beatboxing in itself, it's super, 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 super handy to just have as an asset to, I don't know, build or to support whatever they're really passionate about, be it singing or whatever, you know?
I mean, even people that wouldn't consider themselves musicians, if they had some basic beatboxing skills, maybe they would consider themselves musicians.
Yeah, completely.
Every single person that you talk to, 9 times out of 10, they'll say they can't sing.
Yeah,
and
right.
They have a voice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What do you mean? Of course they can sing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're not used to it.
Yeah, completely. I think also on another level, it opens up another way of thinking, another way of problem solving, which applies itself to every other area that you're, you know, working with as a developing human being. Like, I think it in a sense, like, you know, music is another language, therefore beatboxing is another language. So I think when you open up that way of thinking and that way of problem solving, it makes other things easier too, you know, in every regard of whatever you're learning, I feel.
No, I think if you teach kids beatboxing like how you're teaching the ukulele or the guitar or the piano, it would actually be useful because kids actually might enjoy it, and that might be their instrument or their talent. Like you see kids who are really good with their keyboard when it's their first time playing it, or really good with the guitar or the ukulele or singing. Beatboxing could be their thing if we teach it.
I don't think so, because I feel like music is music no matter what way you look at it. I feel like you can learn a lot of musical ideas and a lot of musical theory from beatboxing. You kind of learn the structure of a song, you kind of learn how to harmonize. So it kind of goes along with that. And throat bass is literally just a version of like Mongolian singing. It's using the same kind of frequencies and the same kind of tone, the tonal frequencies in it. It's just like, I feel like there's a lot of techniques used in beatboxing that can definitely be transferred into the classroom because, like you're saying, yeah, it is new, but the human voice has been around for as long as we know. So I feel like learning this kind of stuff, like learning beatboxing, is only just like, it's like opening another door, and I feel like opening another door is just more exciting, and why would you not want to learn more about this?
It will need structure, but it is, I think personally, going to be a necessary part of the future. Like, it's also much easier to kind of just go, hey, we're going to beatbox. Like you have the I'm going to give on a pair of drumsticks and hit the chair. You need to buy for the drums. You need to buy the drumsticks. You need to buy the chairs. Or there might be chairs there conveniently. There might be drumsticks there conveniently. This takes more effort than.
Do we try and stick with the conventional? Have a teacher and one student, and they get together in a room and they learn for an hour a week and make that happen, or do you think it's better to do it in a more group workshop setting?
I think both are necessary.
Okay.
Mainly because if you just chuck it to a group of 30 people, they're going to go, what is this? I want to give it a go. Because like you don't, like, it's ultimately an optical illusion. Like you don't eat drums, you can't just spit out a snare, but you, yeah. Like most kids by the age of 6 will know what a drum kit looks like and what it is and what function it even plays in the band without being able to describe it maybe, but still.
Yeah, it's in there. They know.
It's in there. But now that's in there and drum kits.
It's no longer an abstract concept that you have to buy and bring into a class. It's in there, it's in there, it's in there, it's in there, it's there. So if you just chuck it to like a group of 30 kids, they'll all go, this is awesome. Yeah. And then you go one-on-one. And then that'll create a class of scary.
I mean, that's a really, really good question. Any instrument that can be learned in its own right should be afforded the same availability and the same importance as any other musical learning. So, you know, if you can learn beatboxing and that takes years to practice and become good at it, and there are teachers to teach it, then why wouldn't we afford it the same importance as learning trumpet or learning violin?
So it's all a question of how then. Should it be done 1v1 just because it's such a new emerging art form?
I mean, so then I was going to come on to classroom as well, because I guess I mean, on the one-to-one front, the kind of master-apprentice thing that we have in music education, we know that it works well because we produce brilliant musicians on all different kinds of instruments and voice, and so that would work. But how easy would it be to actually find? You know, I mean, if there are lots of schools in Sydney, and if all of a sudden everyone went, "Whoa, beatboxing, that's a thing, that's really cool," how would we find enough teachers to teach? So that's a problem. Second thing is, we've got to remember that the one-to-one model is really only available to a very small number of students. So whether it's, you know, because it's expensive and a lot of parents can't afford it, or whether it's because, you know, just not living in an area where it's available or given priority by a school. So even when we think that a one-to-one model would be the way to do it and would be the best way to let kids approach their 10,000 hours and become experts at something. We've got to consider the other models at the same time. For the same reason, when you look at successful models in low socioeconomic status areas like the El Sistema orchestra, but mostly string thing in Venezuela, that's designed to get football teams worth of people learning basics together at once, because it's very expensive to do the one-to-one thing. So, and I would imagine that beatboxing, if we look at the culture behind beatboxing, it probably works quite well in student-directed ways and in small groups, but also small groups performing to big groups would be really motivating.
Yeah, well, I mean, as music of all cultures deserve to be studied. So HSC topic, music of a culture. This year and last year they planned Meet the Music concerts around Britain as music of a culture, and they did the proms concerts. So if rap, hip hop music are worth studying as a music of a culture, then why not beatboxing? Well, I mean, one of the original ways of talking about rhythm, I mean, there's French time names. For example, like where you're talking about like tafa-tefi, 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 or tate, tate, tate. So if we're moving towards a more contemporary language, then at least the students being able to mark time, to be able to recognize differences between quavers and crotchets and all of that. Yeah, I'd see it becoming part of the classroom for sure. It's just instinctive. Like even on Friday rehearsals for musical, the piano part for one of the parts was a bit thin, and I was like, oh, okay, let's just beatbox and fill. It's about filling the gap and just making sure the students know what you want, and it's just the quickest way off the tip of your tongue, so to speak, that you can actually just get that across.
Most beatboxers can teach how to make beatboxing sounds, because they go, how did you do that? And you're like, you explain it by, I use a certain technique that we all know, beatboxers know, or like the shape of your mouth, or you go, oh, you know how to do this, you know how to do a click roll, right? Just do that with your lip, and now you got a lip roll, and it's just like, yeah.
So much of it is about vocabulary. Of just, this is how we talk about it.
Yeah.
So because otherwise it just doesn't exist. It's just making sounds rather than teaching how to do it.
Yeah.
Explaining the way behind it.
I've set up a little amp and then a mixer, and then I'll just drill until nowadays, only recently, this is what I want to do before I was champs, every day before I practice I do vocal warm-ups though now, because I didn't used to. I used to just be like, alright, I've got an idea, go on the mic, and then I just feel like I just couldn't hit it properly. And I started doing just this 7-minute app I learnt from Berrywam in the camp. It's all I needed, and I just went, holy shit, it's so much
That's so good.
It's really good. It's I'm not the best singer, but it just helps with your vocal.
Once you've started that, then you start to go, okay, I've got my foot in the door with this, and I've sparked something new in my brain, and I really love it. How do I do this safely now? Why does this hurt my voice when I do it? What can I do to still accomplish this sound, but create longevity with my instrument?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to every beatboxer out there, they're gonna know. They've tried a sound or two or more that have totally made their throat bleed or totally hurt, and they've lost their voice. I mean, I remember when I was trying to get throat bass when I was 17, and it's increasingly harder for a female to do because our vocal cords aren't as thick, aren't as long. We don't have the bass and baritone accessibility rarely as a male does. So we have to work a little bit harder. And because we're doing that and we're pushing our voices, I remember when I was doing it and I was trying to accomplish it. Keep in mind, this is when I was 17. I didn't accomplish throat bass at a satisfactory level to me until I was 22. When I was 17, first trying it out in my home, I think I was out of school for about a week with tonsillitis and then glandular fever because it got infected and all this gross stuff, because obviously I was oscillating my vocal cords at a frequency that they weren't used to, and every time it hurt and every time I dry coughed, I kept pushing it because I thought that's how I was going to accomplish this sound. I was 17 and I spammed that for ages and only damaged my voice and made myself sick. If that's your method, go for it. That's not on me. But I can tell you that if you keep doing it, you're not going to have a longevity. And if you're very, very passionate about what you do, you got to be able to do it for a long time. You know.
I totally agree. But even if you don't want to do it for a long time, just don't damage your voice.
Yeah, I mean,
just one of those things. It's a part of you. You got to take care of it.
Totally.
You never know when you might need it. Or
yeah, exactly.
One of those things. So maybe there's a system of like, well, okay, you can do anything you want, because that's the best thing about beatboxing.
Yes.
It's so free.
Yes.
It's so flexible, but be careful here and here and here. Thread bass can do this. And
yeah, I mean, all of the tutorials that they've given out have warned people, you know, this will hurt.
Yeah.
It's up to you to continue, but if you do, this is the end product. And a lot of people sort of skip the warning and go, yeah, end product, cool.
Without really considering.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess like a lot of people they've accomplished it safely.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways. I know Tom Thumb's throat bass, whatever he's got, anything, all the sounds he's done, all of the years of his performing and doing beatboxing in loads of different ways. And apparently, the report from all these cameras down his throat says his vocal cords are in pristine condition.
Yeah.
They're totally fine.
I think that comes from him also being a great singer as well. He's got this beautiful tonality in his voice, and he achieves pitch perfectly. And I think that has something to do with that, because he's come from a knowledge base of, oh, if I'm going to sing, here's how I sing without hurting my voice. And I think he's maybe subconsciously or consciously applied that to when he beatboxes, going, cool. Because like, I think as well, like there's a lot of melodic elements that he's incorporated into his beatboxing. He's very musical. So I think whatever he's doing there definitely applies to what he's doing when he beatboxes.
For me, the real code to crack in beatboxing is being able to produce something which pleases the beatboxing ear, but also caters to the general pop. That's when you found that sweet spot. Yeah. Absolutely, and there's only very few beatboxers I've seen do that.
That's the same thing Bernie said.
Very, very few.
It's a balance between the technicality
and the musicality, yeah. That's like when you go really specific into like creating routines which sound like musical compositions.
I think that's one of the biggest changes in the general community mindset is, and you can see it in the battles, because more people that aren't, only expert beatboxers are coming to see the shows, the audience is made up of just more, musicians rather than specifically beatboxers, and they're really resonating more with the musicality of the performances rather than just the technique. Of course, the technique still blows people away, but I feel like musicality is really,
I mean, if you can make your technique go into the musicality, like I think Gail and Luke are really, really, really good at that. If you can use that, that's clever. Like you're already winning with that.
Cool.
Definitely not one-on-one. Okay. If you're really looking to educate the masses, so to speak, I'm talking like in front of a school assembly, running like a full, this is the history of beatbox, this is where it evolved from, and probably even like give a demo of like where it used to be. Like you do the basic, it started from like the Fat Boys, the hip hop artists like Dougie Fresh, Fat Boys, and then how it moved into like Razel, the godfather of noise, Kenny Muhammad, giving like a little demonstration of their style, it'll just be like a timeline thing. So, explain where it came about, who were the early pioneers, do some of their stuff, move on up the timeline. All right, this is what it was here. These were the pioneers. Bang, that's how I'll do it. I'd present that to like a full audience. I don't think that's for one-on-ones, especially if you want to reach the masses. You want to reach the kids and you want to reach the teachers as well. I think that's the best way to do it, and to also show that being a beatboxer is not in its own class. I'm a musician as well. I can write beatbox notation just as a musician does. I can structure just as a musician does. I can do different time signatures just as a musician does. So what really differentiates us? Absolutely nothing. We're all musicians at the end of the day.
I think the way everything's going now, I think it's more possible than ever in the next 10 years for that to be done, in terms of, you were talking about even just people in the media, like Tom Thumb, sort of leading the charge and breaking it into the home of the 7-year-old on the iPad, but comes across that TED Talk, and that's how they're introduced to it. It's no longer this isolated community. It should be, and I think it's starting to be integrated everywhere a little bit more. And you see it even, I keep going back to Tom Thumb, but he did this thing with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. What he did with that, even, just, again, breaking the barriers of what we know beatboxing and the context of what we see it in, to be doing it with the context of Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and for families to see that. And I think that can start being shown in classrooms just as much as, like, we study the orchestra in Year 7, and we do rock in Year 8 or whatever, you do these contexts, and I think nearly in every context you could probably slip some sort of vocal percussion in it, and it can be as easy as, rather than jumping on a kit to demonstrate something, you do it yourself. And I know for a fact, and I think that's totally possible. And even just looking at what they do with rhythm and stuff, and like, we did this thing where we have a game called Don't Clap This One Back, and it's basically body percussion and rhythmic recognition, and I used that not only in music classes, I saw teachers not only use that in my music class, but also just to get their attention, and they don't realise it, but they're learning fundamental music skills while they're doing that. And I think beatboxing could be just as part of that.
Theory is 10 years, and I can get it as a recognised part of the classroom. Maybe not in every classroom, maybe not in every best practice, but as something that everyone touches on generally.
Yeah. It's quite interesting in the reason from the last reason I heard from Border Studies about not being comfortable, and it's been done now. People have performed on turntables in the HSC, but a lot of the pushback on that stuff has actually not been necessarily to do with not being accepting of the genre, or it's not proper music or whatever. I mean, there has been a bit of that, but it's also been about, we don't know how to assess it. And of course the assessment criteria aren't appropriate anyway. So, I mean, that's another side that we would need for beatboxing.
To get it into a more formalised part of the education.
And we need that from both sides. We need very, very smart classroom teachers like you to show us how it's sophisticated and how it relates to the syllabus. But we also need a bit of sympathy from the people writing the syllabi to realise that the language in it is, and this seems to be true right across the world, is restrictive.
In 10 years, I feel like we absolutely can do it, but whether or not it happens is a different story. I feel like it's definitely achievable, but it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think I agree with that 100%. I mean, the workshops would totally be a brilliant thing. I mean, if you bring in people from the local community that are willing to teach these kids, I mean, you could be a great beatboxer, but you've also got to be a good teacher. And sometimes those two do or don't go hand in hand. And I think you've got to have patience, because beatboxing is difficult, yes. But also when kids do it, you're dealing with young people that are very excited to bring this new thing into their vocabulary. And we have a tendency to be annoying. Like, I remember when I was little, I think I was like 14, trying to get this different type of throat bass before I developed the other one. I was 14, going around Blockbusters or something with my cousin, just like going and like just really spamming that sound, like. And it didn't sound like that though when I was trying out, and she would just eventually turn around. She was like, "Can you not?" So you got to be warned. That's a warning label that's going to happen. But I think that applies to anyone who's like teaching guitar in the
If you
curriculum.
just walked around all day playing guitar.
Yeah, I mean, I was that kid in high school and primary school. I was always walking around with a guitar trying to figure something out, and of course it drove people nuts, but whatever, if
But
that's the
ultimately
environment.
it helped.
Yes.
Like that was a faster way for you to figure things out.
Yes, absolutely.
Than if you had to do it in 1 hour blocks
Yes.
once a week or...
Yes, and also what encouraged me to get better was that I was doing it with my friends. I was in an environment that was really supportive, and I was with friends who were encouraging it. So every time I accomplished a new sound or figured something out, like, oh, that's really cool, teach it to me, or that's really cool, do it again, and it's great for your self-esteem as well, you feel fantastic when your friends are around you going, what was that, let's do this again, show that to that person, and I think that's a perfect thing to introduce into a learning environment, especially for music students, and especially just for high school students or primary school students in general. Like, one, it's good for your self-esteem. Two, you're in an environment where you're learning something completely new, and it's going to definitely apply to other areas in your learning. And I think, yes, bring in local beatboxers to teach those workshops, or to at least inspire the kids to do something. Yeah, absolutely. And to share what is actually possible with this. I mean, think about it. You've got your Tom Thumbs, you've got, your Lukes, your Gales, Voltax, your Genesis. They're all, and like all across the world as well. The European beatboxers are nuts, and you've got all of these people that are brilliant at what they do, and they've built an empire, or they're starting to break into the gig scene, or, you got people like you who are applying it to education, and Tom Thumbs is actually a really good, I've given him so many shout outs, but he's a good example of that. He brings in educational aspects to his videos, and he's also entertaining. And, these people probably all just started out making weird noises, and then didn't realize that this was the path that they were going to take. I think there's great career opportunities in this, and I think that there's fantastic possibilities that you could give to these kids from introducing beatboxing into the learning environment. Honestly, it was great for me, and I know it was great for a lot of the other people I know. So yeah.
Beatboxing is a subgenre of a subgenre of a subgenre. This is the music industry. You have acapella, and then out of acapella you have like beatboxing. It just keeps going on down there. However, I do think there will be a catalyst, and I think there will be at some point there will be a time where beatboxing is very mainstream. Whether it's some artist that brings up, many artists do it. Justin Timberlake and all these people use beatboxing in some way or another in their popular music. So it's just going to take a bit of time, but I think we'll start to see that with the beatboxing championships, with more and more people providing outlets to do this, and more people, especially in the age of the internet. Why can't it take off? I think it's bound to happen. It's going to be something that becomes, I think, a part of our culture that we accept and all want to do. And much like a child growing up and picking up a violin when they're young, or their parents saying, hey, you need to learn piano. Who knows? Maybe one of these days they might be going, let's learn some acapella. You need to go do beatboxing, blah, blah, blah. Don't know. However, so I think in the next 10 years, it would be very realistic where school systems could have this as part of their little subset of their vocal pedagogy in their curriculum. I think it's very possible. I think we should plan for it, and I think that the bold and forward-thinking performing arts schools are going to jump at the chance for that, because it's gonna be a differentiator for them. As all things, it kind of comes down to that. What's the business case for it, especially with private schools who have a lot of money and who can invest heavily into performing arts. I think you're going to see that a lot more, and it would be smart to do so. I think it would be a worthwhile venture.
Okay, well, thanks, man. Really appreciate you coming out.
OG, man. Thanks.
Great to see you again.
I appreciate it, bro. Thanks.
All right, thanks, man. Really appreciate your time. Lovely speaking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Awesome. Cheers.
Anyway, long process. Thank you very much for your time. It's been lovely talking to you.
You work out, man.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Very good.
Awesome. Thanks, Connor.
I think we have to do this.
Thank you very much, man.